Okay, so we are the female product lead community, and our vision is inclusive product leadership. We empower women and every underrepresented voice in product to grow, lead, and connect. So this community is really at the heart of helping you to grow in your product leadership career as a female product person. It could be in product management, product ownership, product adjacent roles. What we are striving for is an environment where you can feel empowered to have a voice and grow in confidence as you go through your career in product and in tech. We have a couple of events that we host to help get people ahead of their leadership roles in terms of online events, in-person events. We also have an active Slack community. If you are not already a part of it, there's that QR code at the top where you can and scan it, fill the form out, and then one of us would let you into the Slack community. We also have a mentoring program, peer-to-peer support, and we are a not-for-profit, free now and free forever. These are the amazing people, team of volunteers that currently run the female product lead community. We're all volunteering our time to run all of these events, put materials, content out just to support you in your journey in tech, in product. And we have 4 teams of event this year. We have power, belonging, voice, and inclusive innovation. All of our events this year will be centered around these 4 major themes. And today's event is um, around belonging, right? So across the year, we're going to have different events that speaks to these different key themes for 2026. And this is a list of the next 3 in-person events. We also have online events in between, but just highlighting the next set of in-person events that we have. You can scan that QR code to have a view of all of our events that are coming next, and subscribe to our Luma events page so that you get notified whenever we have any new events posted. Okay, so I'll stop sharing this tab now.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks for everyone for coming today and giving up your time. I'm really excited to go through this reframing and building belonging. It comes from like a social capital perspective, which was in the description, and I find social capital really fascinating. So I'm really glad that I'm able to share that with you today. So I'm just going to share my screen. If you see it as a thumbnail on one of the squares, if you click on it, I think it becomes the main thing that you can see on your screen. But if you have any issues and you can't see it or hear me, just let us know. So just to kind of get started, about me, just a quick introduction. So I'm the co-founder of Sharp Insights. So it started in 2021. And then it became like a freelancer, self-employment kind of thing until earlier this year in January, where myself and my husband have taken a different direction. So we run the business together, and we help with AI adoption and market validation, and also grant writing. So I'm the author of Make Products That Matter, which is all about how to do customer and user research from idea all the way through to products which are sort of launched in the market. I have a background in product in terms of working with different product teams for building products. So I worked at an AI product studio and also was a product manager and kind of leader in the fintech organization. We also build and ship our own AI products. So we're just building Juno and Thea at the moment. And also I work and mentor founders and sometimes product leaders, but also business leaders around like customer behavior, personal challenges when it comes to leadership, and also strength of commercial signals if they're kind of chatting to people. So my background is in psychology, culture, and sociology. And that's where I discovered social capital. So it comes from this place of like behavior and things. So a lot of the things that we're going to go through today will be pretty actionable. Okay, so first of all, we just want to do a little quick poll, which is what does belonging mean to you? So I'm not sure how that's going to work. Is it going to be in the chat? Cool.
So for everybody who doesn't know, the poll will come up on the left-hand side. It's a tab next to chat.
Okay. Is that in the chat?
The last link you posted was the one for the event. We're having fun today, aren't we?
It's all good.
Thank you. I miss butter already.
Excuse the pun, but it was pretty smooth.
It was so smooth.
But this is also good. Cool. So let's have a look at Slido, see if I can. So once everyone's put their like voted, I guess, on this, we'll be able to all see it. Is that how that works? Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah. So what does belonging mean to you? Being accepted for who I am, having close work relationships, friendships, being included in important decisions, feel like I'm part of something bigger, or all of the above. So this is how you feel about belonging at work and what it means to you. So we've had got about 12 people who've voted so far. It's about half. Nice. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, so 80% are all of the above. So that's interesting. So maybe it looks like one or two have kind of gone for the individual ones. Brilliant. All right, so I'll move on. Yeah, so it's interesting that it's kind of all of the above. You'll see what I mean and why that's going to be relevant shortly. So in terms of belonging, most leadership development kind of treats it as like culture or like a feeling kind of thing. But through the lens of social capital, we can treat it as like an infrastructure that you can build and that you can create through like habits and behaviors and things like that. And I think like once I started to see it through this lens, I couldn't sort of unsee it. So I'm really excited to share it with you. Okay, so first of all, like what is belonging? So belonging is all about having a shared identity, feeling a sense of like solidarity with your team and business, feeling valued, understood, connected to something bigger, and knowing that others see you as like one of us, so like you're part of the gang kind of thing. And belonging is like a good foundation for trust, cooperation, and collective action. And I'll come back to this as to like how social capital fits in with that, but that's kind of like how it feels. So in terms of like the experience of it, even though it isn't necessarily like all down to kind of how you feel and experience belonging, because we can kind of build it, this is kind of like a symptom, I guess, of belonging if it's been built as an infrastructure. So belonging kind of feels like being able to speak up without having to second guess yourself, having ideas received with openness and not skepticism, feeling energized by collaboration and not exhausted by it, and also working towards shared goals with people who have your back. So I really hope that you're kind of working more in those environments, because the other side, which is experience of not feeling like you're belonging, is constantly feeling the room like you need to adjust or perform, feeling isolated even when you're around your colleagues, thinking about leaving, and maybe important decisions are being made in conversations that you're not part of. So that's kind of how it feels when you do or kind of don't belong. So in terms of belonging, it's important to business because high belonging correlates with a big increase in job performance. It reduces turnover and sick days as well, which is really interesting. So if you want to have a look more at that, there's Better Up that did a couple of reports. So one back in 2019 and 2020, so not too recently, unfortunately. And also, if you have a sponsor, so other people can advocate and speak for you when you're not in the room. From a female kind of leadership perspective, more women I think they felt more satisfied with their career advancement when they did have a sponsor than without. And that's something that we'll kind of come back to a bit later. And also there was an experiment where participants were excluded from a 2-minute virtual ball toss game. And then they felt less productive after on the tasks that followed. So that's kind of why it links with the first point, which is when you feel belonging, you perform better and you have a better experience, so less likely to kind of leave and have better job satisfaction. So even though we've kind of spoken a bit about the experience and feeling of it, it's not always that. It can be built through social capital. So in terms of the social capital aspects, there's 3 main types. So the first one is bonding, and that's like your inner circle. Then we have bridging, which is your cross-functional networks that could go across different departments in the business, which is interesting from a product leadership perspective, because usually you have to work across different functions in the company. And also linking, so your strategic network. And then underneath all this, we have the cultural capital, which is what you know and how you communicate and how that's valued. So building on that, social capital across all those 3 types means that you're able to access things through your relationships and network, like information, influence, resources, and support. But going across these as well are 3 dimensions. So we've got structural, relational, and cognitive. So structural is like the network itself, so who you know and how you're connected. Relational is the quality of the connections, so that kind of trust that you feel, shared identity and obligations. And then cognitive, such shared understanding, language, norms and values. I know it's quite theoretical at this point, but I promise it won't be too much more theory. So in terms of how social capital and belonging connect, they kind of flow into one another. So belonging flows into social capital because we have the feeling of shared identity, and that creates trust. So when you trust, you cooperate and you can form networks faster, like within the company. It also increases participation, so you want to show up to events and initiatives and contribute your ideas freely and build connections. So a bit like that feeling of belonging that I mentioned earlier in terms of, contributing your ideas freely without judgment. Also, belonging creates support networks, so people are likely to help you. You feel okay asking for help, and reciprocity feels sort of natural and balanced, because if you're going to help them, they'll probably help you. And also social capital sort of feeds into belonging, because the structural side, so those networks can fulfill the need to belong, and also having lots of diverse connections with across your company, as well as in your team, can help you feel like you have stable relationships and not feel too isolated. And also with shared norms, so feeling that everybody is on the same page and you feel like you belong, that is because you understand how things work, you speak the same language and you feel understood. And also you have access to resources, which helps you build your competence, like information on how things work. So you know where to find all the, I don't know, on your shared drive or whatever it might be, or who to ask for it, in your organization for further help or information. But also the cultural codes that help you navigate and feel capable and valued. But we'll come back to those. So thinking about the types of capital that I mentioned, so bonding, like your inner circle, bridging, so across your cross-functional network across different teams, or linking, so your strategic network, which might be how close you are to management, and the cultural aspect, so what you know and how you communicate, how that's valued. with those in mind, which type of capital do you think is the weakest for you right now that you need more help on? So I'm just going to go back to this once again. So bonding is like your inner circle. So your work besties, maybe your team. Bridging, so your cross-functional network. So this could feel a bit weak if your company has siloed ways of working, or linking. So that means it might be that you're disconnected from senior decision makers. And cultural might be maybe the language, or how people communicate. There could be kind of something there that's kind of weaker. Okay, so linking is the weakest one. Interesting. So that's about half of you. So about 44% now. So yeah, across bridging and cultural together. So what we're going to look at next is kind of more of the practical ways of how to build these. So so it's interesting that it's linking. So this is how to strengthen. So with all that in mind, I mean, there was quite a lot of theory there, but kind of wanted to kind of set the scene and paint the picture as to what these things mean. So then it should give you a better foundation for understanding like why these kind of habits and ways of building different types of capital, why they're kind of outlined in the way they are. So the first one is so initially we'll look at how to strengthen the different types of capital, and also how to actually build the infrastructure of belonging for you and your team. So the first one is bonding in action. So this is about improving team performance. So this is all about psychological safety and allowing your team to take risks, which is an important part of innovation and development, within creating different products. So part of it is perhaps showing vulnerability and showing that not knowing isn't necessarily a credibility risk, which sometimes it can feel like that as a female leader. So it might be that you're kind of showing that you haven't necessarily got all the answers. And vulnerability is something that Brené Brown speaks about a lot. If you haven't looked at any of her work, she's amazing. So it might be that, in one-to-ones, if there's a problem, you kind of solve it together. Like, there's this issue and I'd really like to work it out with you. I've noticed X, Y, Z. Maybe we can come up with a plan together. Or, in a team like this, I haven't solved this one yet. Here's what I'm thinking, like encouraging people to contribute. So what this does is it creates that foundation of psychological safety, but trust does require vulnerability, and that can be quite difficult for some people. But the idea is that psychological safety drives innovation, because if people can take risks and they can experiment and try stuff, that in itself drives innovation. And that is important, particularly in this day and age of AI, that they might be able to try it out in a safe environment. And also teams with this really strong bonding capital, they outperform those without it. So those kind of signs and symptoms earlier of belonging can kind of indicate how bonding feels and belonging feels within your team. And also from a cultural capital perspective, when you kind of take this approach, it means that because people are contributing, that everybody feels heard and understood, and that there is value in lots of different approaches to different problems, and that everybody's approach and voice counts. So that's kind of how to improve team performance, and some strategies there to improve that inner circle kind of bonding capital. Next we have bridging capital. So this is about product innovation, and this one's really interesting because this is about information flow. So you could be like a super connector in your organization, which is where you help make connections across the business. So you might introduce a developer to sales, or someone within your product team to marketing, for example. So you're encouraging kind of cross-functional working. And so it might be, this person does this, meet this person that does that. I really thought it'd be great for you to to chat. So with diverse networks, it just means that it helps information flow, but also it helps to give you a really good understanding as to what's happening across the company, but also outside of the company as well. So if you were going to have like use this approach, then it just means that you can have an overview as to what's happening in the market, maybe what competitors are doing, and all of that can help you kind of understand where your product sits and might encourage innovation. Also, I've done a company workshop recently. I found it really interesting because people really want to be involved across different functions at the beginning of a product's development, because there's so many different types of skills that can be contributed towards the product. So you've got the development side, marketing, maybe sales, and this can help with building that cross-functional trust right at the very beginning and encourage and enable like fast innovation. And that's something to kind of bear in mind, particularly because of AI. You can, iterate fast, but it's good if it's, this kind of cross-functional approach as well. So it's kind of going in the right direction. And also from a cultural capital perspective, this is really effective, particularly if you're the person that can help translate across the different contexts. So when you're making those introductions, it might start to break down some of the translation language barriers. So maybe marketing speak is different to technical development speak. So if you understand the different perspectives, it can help you translate and help people understand each other as well. So the one that came up the most in terms of the weakest, this is linking in action, where it's about strategic growth. So it's kind of like reducing the distance between you as a leader and senior decision makers or the leadership team, if you're not part of that already. So here, this is about offering like a commitment and then over-delivering. So for example, I want to send you this update by Friday, but then you send it earlier with like a bit extra that they didn't really ask for. So this is about building that trust through action rather than words. So when you're not in the room, then people can advocate for you because they've been the receiving end of your amazing work. And this could be important for women, particularly who need advocates for recommendations and to be put forward for things like speaking opportunities and senior roles. But obviously, bear this one in mind, in that you're choosing who you do this for strategically, in that they're allies and not going to take the mick, essentially, and that they're the right people who can vouch for you and be an advocate for you. And also from a cultural capital perspective, when you kind of do this, it helps senior leaders to see that you understand them, that you're speaking their language, particularly if it's a really useful insight that you've offered that they didn't ask for. And so across all these, we've had that kind of cultural capital element, but here, focusing on it sort of specifically, if you understand cultural capital, it means that you can drive your legitimacy and influence. So for example, with that translation that I mentioned earlier, you can use language but in a strategic way. So for example, instead of saying, I wanted to make sure everybody felt heard before committing, then you might use more of their language, like I was de-risking downstream execution by understanding these technical constraints early, for example. So it just means that you're being heard in a room and being taken seriously because you're using their language. You've got that cultural capital. You've been able to translate things in a language that makes sense to them. And also you can you can reshape what things are important as well. So instead of saying the team delivered this launch on time, then you might say this launch worked because Priya flagged the onboarding risk 3 sprints ago, which is why we pivoted the scope. So that's showing that you're listening as a leader, you're showing the right behaviors, so that you understand that you need to flag risks early, that you're being really proactive, that you listen across different teams, particularly if Priya was maybe on the development side, because you've done that kind of cross-functional linking work, or like bridging work. Also what you can do in terms of reshaping is demonstrating what's important and what it means to be a good leader. So it's really like giving credit openly and visibly around collaboration, because in this example, if I was going to be saying this, then I would be flagging that and making Priya visible for everybody to show that, like, you know, she's amazing. So that can help build your influence and legitimacy. So that's kind of some real life tangible stuff that you can do. But now you understand it from a social capital perspective and why these things are important. Another thing when it comes to social capital is about value exchange and reciprocity. So reciprocity is where you help others, essentially. So looking at it from the social capital perspective, it's about leading with generosity and giving first without any expectation of return. And that does so much for you because, in the long term, people might feel that they need to return the favor because there's that obligation to reciprocate. So in terms of your approach here, it might be that you give a lot. So you make a lot of introductions. You do that public credit example that I mentioned earlier in terms of collaboration. You could pass opportunities over. You could be the advocate for that person. Maybe underrepresented talent, perhaps in your team, or someone that you've seen doing amazing work in the business. And then there's the 25%, which is balanced exchange, which is where you offered something and then someone gave it back to you sort of roughly equally. And then we have strategic receiving, which is asking for help and accepting mentor time. But a lot of people take, and they just take, and then they don't really give that much. But you might start seeing that people that give a lot are those that are, I guess, noticed a bit more, like, or they help make, or they're seen as like generous, and like you want to help them because they've helped you, in some way. So value exchange is part of that kind of give first approach. So in terms of different examples, it might be that you are generous with your knowledge. So like with these, amazing lunch and learns, for example, in a way, there's kind of, social capital being built through, this give first approach. So you're sharing your product knowledge. You can mentor junior product managers. You might be that translator and explain technical concepts to non-technical stakeholders so everybody understands, like, the conversation. It might also be that you help people access things, like you can connect people to opportunities. You might send something over to someone, so you might be making connections with the resources, and maybe even decision makers as well. And then you've got advocacy. So this might be where you champion someone. You might speak up for diverse perspectives in product decisions. So that might be within your team, external customers, people across the organization. So these are kind of part of that value exchange, which I think is really fascinating. But what the amazing thing about social capital is that it has a compounding effect, and it does impact others. So this can be almost like seen as kindness, but it's almost like strategic kindness in a way, because if you make introductions, a lot of them might not go anywhere, but for one person, it might change their life. It might be completely transformative, and then those introductions might lead to other introductions, like for you or for them, that you never really know where it's going to go, but like you were part of it in some way. Also, it has a multiplier effect, because if you can create psychological safety in your team, then it means that they might feel safer in, taking risks, and they might have stronger bonds, and that might spread out, because they might feel happier and more satisfied in their role. And then other teams or other leaders might be like, "What are you doing? It seems to be kind of working. Your team seems to be really happy and performing well, etc." And also with the sponsorship thing. If you sponsored others, then they might sponsor other people in the future. And also, if you've done that reshaping piece, like highlighting credit where there's been collaboration, you're demonstrating what good leadership looks like, and then other people might copy it because you've kind of role modeled it. So in terms of a measure of success here, it might not necessarily be how big your network is, but how you've been part of other people's and made them feel like they belong. So in terms of building habits through this social capital approach, with bonding, it might be you hold one-to-ones to really understand people and their individual motivations. I do find this really interesting because if you haven't done this, you might assume someone's motivation is something, but then in reality, it might be something different. But it's helping you really understand your team if you don't do one-to-ones already. The second thing is about that kind of shared identity and shared value aspects. So creating team rituals help to reinforce that shared identity, like, you're one of us, we do this. And it might be, as a team, we just do bingo every Friday. Like, that's our thing. Also practicing vulnerability and, sharing about how you've learned, what you've learned, that you don't necessarily have all the answers. Bridging, some habits that you can build here are about just making those introductions across the business, maybe even kind of outside the business, depending on situation. But I think the second one is important because I mentioned I did that organizational. It was kind of like a review, but mainly the product team. And this was the one thing that they said. They were like, I just really want to be involved at the beginning. I don't want to be given instructions where I don't understand the context, or, I didn't have a say, or I was involved too late. So that bridging can help to build trust and I think make better products early on, because you have those diverse perspectives and you're really making the most of everybody's skills too. Also, publicly demonstrating credit for collaboration. So in someone that I used to work, they used to call this kudos. And it was really great to be able to hear about all the positive things that were happening across the organization. Also linking. So if you want to be strategic, and as in like getting closer to the senior decision makers, it might be that you start to attend more industry events, maybe local community events, maybe you build your own community events. So that means that you might be able to make sort of broader connections, which could help your business strategically. Also, like offer those pre-commitments to senior stakeholders, like demonstrate through action what you can do rather than just kind of words. So it's like show not tell approach. And also, if you can, like sponsor emerging talent to amplify the diverse voices and then demonstrate this to decision makers, just to kind of highlight the amazing talent in the teams, and that you understand the benefit of having different perspectives, which we spoke about earlier. And also from a cultural perspective, to really understand the language and the codes, like who are the translators, like what language are they using? I don't know if you've ever been in a meeting and someone used jargon and then someone's like, what does that mean? Or someone hasn't said, what does that mean? But you can kind of tell because the conversation hasn't moved on quite as well. But it might be just observing, like how is somebody translating, very highly technical language into something simple, but not, in a patronizing kind of way. So it's understanding like the language. So the language being used by developers, strategic decision makers, marketing team, sales team, product team, and just being able to almost decode and translate across the different environments. And also creating space for multiple communication styles and maybe team rituals. But the most recent example of this would be in team meetings. So I've in a situation recently, someone said, people tell me stuff, but I can't remember it. I forget, half of it. But like if it was visual and it had like text and then, you know, it was explained, it's more likely to be remembered. So it's just kind of, you know, if you're doing, when you're communicating, it's accounting for those different communication styles, and also celebrating different forms of expertise, like across the business. You know, the different skills that I mentioned, which is, you know, it relates to the previous point about having different perspectives involved right at the very beginning. Yeah, so that was quite a lot, but hopefully by kind of seeing these actions and like ways of working, you might think in your environment how it's you know, how other people behaving and acting, and do some of the successful people in your organization, do they do this? Could you do more of this? What does that look like? So that's kind of the next poll, really, which is which action will you take first? So I think that Catherine's going to maybe put that on screen. I'm just interested to see which one you might do first, because you mentioned linking earlier. Yeah, so over delivering to build trust. Yeah, cultural. Yeah, so reshaping and translating. Yeah, interesting, showing vulnerability as well. So we've got 6 people. Any more want to get involved? Okay, so it looks like it's kind of related to the point earlier where we mentioned the one that you thought was weakest, which was the linking one. So yeah, over delivering to build trust, that's something that you could do. But if you kind of read into this, there might be other tactics or approaches that you can take to, I guess, reduce that distance between yourself and senior decision makers. And then the second one is that cultural aspect, so reshaping and translating. Thank you. That's interesting. Right. So we've got about 15 minutes. If you have any questions, I think that I saw 1 or 2 pop up in the chat. But if you want to reach out to me, here's my email address, and you can follow me on LinkedIn if you like. And I think we might have a Substack article coming soon about this. And just before we go to the questions, just wanted to do a little plug, which was how we work with product teams. So we can do workshops about customer market validation, and also we do product leadership coaching. And next week we're doing a webinar all about using Copilot strategically. So if that's of any interest to you, it's on our website. But any questions?
Shall I just ask mine out loud? Is that
sure.
better? Because I don't know if there were others. The first question, I was trying to put it into Slido, but it's actually too long for Slido. So sadly, I can't copy and paste. I think it's actually really related to the poll that we've just done, which is like everyone wants to over deliver. I think this is really common, especially as women in product, like that we tend to over deliver and give and give and give. We're very generous. But there isn't always that recognition for the contribution, and or those who are in our team are often not, like maybe by us, they're recognized for their generosity, but others within the cross-functional organization or in leadership don't recognize that generosity for what it's worth and for what it offers culturally in terms of belonging, cohesion, you know. It's the sort of like glue work that I feel like female product managers are often actually very good at. What, I guess, like, what do we do with that? And I think it maybe plays into my second question around, like, there's often like toxic players in leadership or maybe to the left and right of us in our teams. And how do we continue to protect that belonging and that psychological safety when there is a toxic player and or someone is under recognized? I guess those are sort of the 2 angles that I was pondering on during your talk. Thanks.
I think that's an interesting point, because it does, like you say, kind of feed into what women do a lot of, which is that kind of over delivery sometimes. So I guess it's like being strategic as to who you might over deliver for. Like, would they fight your corner? Would they be your advocate? Would they are they part of the key decisions where they might mention your name if there's a promotion coming up or different opportunities? Otherwise it could be just you're helping someone with no reciprocity or no, you're not making as much impact as you want. So I suppose it's kind of choosing carefully who those decision makers are that you want to get close to, and why, and how, if you will get the recognition for it or not. But in terms of the toxic environment, I guess it is difficult because it's, you know, part of that culture. So it's down to what you can control and implement yourself. So as a product leader, you can make your own team environment as, you know, as good as you can. So you might be able to use some of the bonding, like inaction stuff, to kind of make your team like as solid as possible, and you kind of almost protect them from the toxicity like as much as possible, just so you can make it, you know, as a microculture within your organization, you know, as nice a place to be as possible.
So just like to recap what I heard, like basically reciprocity is like maybe like a two-way street, and we should be like with boundaries, right? Thinking about who is actually also going to offer us reciprocity. So I think just being able to recognize that in someone else is really a skill maybe to develop. And then secondly, creating like subcultures inside of cultures where there might be a toxic player or like an element of toxicity can be like a boon for your team or for you as an individual.
Yeah, because you might be able to, because within your circle of control and influence, you might be able to, you know, protect them from the wider culture, and just make it as awesome as you can in your team. So you might create your own rituals, like this is just what our team do. It might not be taken up by the whole company, but, you know, we might have a, I don't know, like a, you know, on a Monday kind of share something, or maybe we every quarter we do this, I don't know, meet up, or we have bingo night on, or whatever it might be. But it's like you're creating your own like shared identity and space, because that's what you can control within, you know, the constraints of your you know, of your role.
I think that's great, because people will be having very different levels of you know, control and influence. Amazing. Thanks.
I guess on that point as well, there is this thing which is negative reciprocity, which is about where you give, and then you don't get anything in return. So like you said, with the continuing to give, it is a skill in itself to watch out as to, are you giving without anything coming back? That's a good point. Alina? I can't hear you. I think you might be mute.
Sorry about that. I wanted to also touch on over-delivering, because I think I find it problematic as a tactic to improve linking and communication with leadership, because I think that very often work objectives are set for a reason. And if this becomes your tactic to be noticed, or, you know, to you know, develop better relationships with leadership, then you are always thinking not of what you're asked to do, but what you should be doing on top of what you're asked to do. And I don't think this is good in terms of a team. I think it pits people against each other. And also from the point of view of myself and the people I lead, I think that it is on me to be clear about what is expected, and to not expect more, because I think that is in itself a miscommunication. So perhaps I've misunderstood how you think it should be positioned, but to me, it over delivering is something that is not quantifiable, and that it is fuzzy, open for interpretation, and it should not be something that leadership expect, and I don't expect personally.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think what I was trying to get across there is how you can show rather than tell, because if you want to get noticed by senior leadership, I mean, a lot of this is context sort of specific, but it might be that, I don't know, you don't take enough risks or something, and then it might think, oh, that you're risk averse, but then if you keep saying, no, I will take risks or whatever, and then you don't, then you're kind of the actions might speak louder than words. If you say, we took risks because we did X, Y, Z, and you're talking their language to demonstrate that what they were looking for, like you have. So it's kind of more around building visibility, but also through trust through actions, because it's not just words. And that was one example of over delivering, but that is, like you say, difficult because it has things around like expectations and competitiveness, and is it recognized, and it's fuzzy and things. So it'll be context specific, but it's about being noticed to the right people, and it will be down to that context as well as to what they might be looking for and what it might mean to them, and if they do recognize it.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any more questions? I saw your ones earlier, Meg, so I think I've answered those. Thanks for that. Yeah, we've got time for one more. Brilliant, thank you. If we don't have any questions, yeah, thanks very much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, I find with social capital, it's just such an interesting lens to look at things like introductions and translating things and language and things like that. So hopefully now it's given you a bit of a structure to sort of see how, if you do those things, the potential impact it could have on different sides of your relationships, whether it's like your team or the business, or if you're looking at going sort of horizontal with cross-functional, or kind of up with like senior leaders and things. So
yeah, it's been brilliant, Chloe. Really, I think it's given me lots of thoughts and ideas, especially as I'm spending a lot of my time thinking about how to help people to understand how to do that. And so the framing and the language that you've used, because quite often we do these things without thinking about it. Like, how do you land your message with a different discipline? How do you land your message with a stakeholder that has a completely different agenda to you? And I think, over sort of the course of many, many years of doing that in sort of fairly toxic and tricky environments, I've learned some ways that I do it that are personal to me, but then framing that and explaining that for other people, I think I've particularly found useful. So thank you so very much. I really appreciated it.
Thank you. Thank you. It is interesting when, like, I guess from like personal experience, how like I've done, like, similarly, I've done these things I had without having realized it, but then when I looked at it through this lens, I thought, now I can understand why people might send me something, or like how I've given without expectation. That's kind of helped me in the future, even though that wasn't my intention to get something back.
I don't know if you can see the feedback that's coming through, but we've got a couple of comments there. People have said it's been a good way to structure thinking about belonging in terms of leadership, team and culture. Super useful knowledge to put into everyday activities. And then loving the advice about framing and thinking about purposeful positioning of messaging given culture and audience. So thank you so much, Chloe. I think we're almost out of time now.
Here we are. Thank you. Thanks very much for your attention and everything today.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. Hopefully we'll iron those out for our next online event. Catherine, despite my intervention and getting in the way and talking to a blank space, you manage admirably as usual. Thank you so much, Catherine. I don't know what was going on. You could hear me and I couldn't hear you or something, whatever. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Cheers, everybody.
All right, see you later. Thank you. Bye.